Hey, welcome! Today we're digging into a really interesting piece of analysis from commentator Davis Hanson. He speculates on what an ideal US-Iran conflict might look like. So we're going to explore the military logic, the political risks, and, the one huge challenge that this whole scenario really hinges on.
So right off the bat, this quote, it pretty much captures the entire goal of this hypothetical operation. It's the dream outcome, right? A swift, decisive victory that completely reshapes the region in just a matter of weeks. Every single step we're about to talk about is designed to get to this exact end state.
So, what does this dream actually look like in practice? Well, the analysis lays out a pretty clear step-by-step plan. Let's break down how this best-case scenario is supposed to unfold.
Okay, so first, it starts with these really targeted strikes, right? The goal is to weaken the regime's grip on power. Then, in theory, this emboldens the Iranian people to rise up and take over, something they've tried to do before. The third step, and this is the big political play, is flying in a sort of pre-packaged coalition government to fill that power vacuum. And the final result? A new, normalized Middle East. It's a very ambitious four-step plan, for sure.
Now, for any of that to actually happen, the military conflict has to go a very specific way. The whole idea hinges on a particular view of the military balance of power. It's really framed as a war of attrition that, well, heavily favors one side.
This slide right here gets to the absolute core of the military argument. So on one hand, you've got Iran with thousands of weapons, but it's a finite number. The analysis assumes a total air blockade, which means once a missile is used, it's just gone. No resupplies from Russia or China. But on the other hand, you have a coalition with over 1,000 jets that can strike, go back, rearm, and strike again. The key here is attrition. One side's arsenal shrinks every single day, while the other's really doesn't.
So, given that imbalance, you have to ask, how could Iran possibly win? Well, the analysis suggests two main paths. First, they could inflict mass casualties to create a powerful anti-war movement back in the West. Or second, they could pull off some shocking strategic victory, like shutting down the Strait of Hormuz and crippling the world's oil supply. The scenario, though, suggests that neither of these is very likely.
But look, even if all the military math works out perfectly, the entire plan pivots on one massive unknown: the reaction of the 88 million people inside Iran. This is really presented as the single greatest uncertainty in this whole scenario.
And this is the question at the absolute heart of it. If your country is getting hit by airstrikes, even if they're aimed at the government, does it make you angry at the attacker? Or does it make you feel empowered to finally overthrow your oppressors? The analysis is pretty clear on this point. Nobody really knows the answer.
So this lays out the two starkly different possibilities. On the one hand, seeing infrastructure destroyed, fearing for friends or family, yeah, that could easily breed a ton of resentment toward the attackers. But on the other hand, seeing a repressive government suddenly weakened could be the exact signal people have been waiting for to, as the source puts it, hit the streets. You've got two completely opposite reactions that are both possible.
All right, so moving beyond Iran's borders, another key factor is obviously the reaction of the international community. How would other major world powers respond to a conflict of this scale?
Well, the analysis paints a very predictable and maybe a little cynical picture of the European response. It suggests they'll start with some cautious statements, then basically just wait and see who's winning. If it looks like a US-Israeli victory is on the horizon, then they'll offer vocal support and maybe some ceremonial help, but not much more. It's a strategy of, betting on the likely winner.
And what about the big players, Russia and China? According to Hanson's analysis, they are pretty unlikely to intervene directly. Russia is seen as too broken and depleted by the war in Ukraine to really be a factor. And China, well, based on its past behavior during crises in places like Panama and Venezuela, the prediction is that they'll protest loudly, but ultimately do nothing.
Okay, this brings us to the final and maybe the most important battleground of all, the court of public opinion, right here in the United States.
So the crucial point here is that American support for a war is seen as incredibly fragile. It's conditional. The public will back a winner, but only, and this is a big only, if the win comes quickly and cheaply, without a high price in American blood or treasure. And the Iraq War is used as a key historical example here. Public support started at a staggering 90% when the statue of Saddam Hussein fell. But as the conflict dragged on and the costs mounted, that support just plummeted. It was below 50% by 2006 and all the way down to just 20% by the end of Bush's term. It's a really stark reminder of how quickly public opinion can turn.
So these are basically the red lines.
If the conflict turns into a long, drawn-out quagmire, if ground troops have to get involved, or if casualties start to mount, the analysis predicts that domestic support would just collapse, creating a total political disaster at home.
So after walking through all the military, the popular, and the political dynamics, we finally arrive at the last and probably the most difficult challenge of this entire hypothetical scenario.
And there it is. After the fighting stops, after the regime is gone, then what? Who runs the country? The analysis frames this as the ultimate $64,000 question, and it's one with no easy answer at all.
And that's really the final takeaway. The biggest hurdle isn't just winning a war, it's what comes after. It's achieving the peace. The analysis concludes that success requires finding what it calls a magical solution, one that installs a stable, friendly government without the high cost of a long-term occupation. And that really leaves us with the final question. In the complex reality of geopolitics, do magical solutions actually exist?